Hello, welcome everyone. We are trying a new series. We're calling it Toolhouse Rock. Apparently, it's a play on words for Schoolhouse Rock. I have not seen that show, but some people might remember it. But what we're trying to do, and I'll explain it in 30 seconds, is to explore different Web3 and DeFi tools that might help different either clusters or even ecosystem actors with their operations, or pretty much with anything that they need to get done. So what we're going to do is explore and try to categorize them in a way or another. Again, this is one of our first attempts, so hopefully we'll get better. Thank you, Matt, for helping us being the first one. It's not always easy to be the first one, but we appreciate you a lot for that. Couple of boring disclaimers. Yeah, our views are our own. We do not represent the whole MakerDAO. There are some inaccuracies that are possible and likely at this point, I would say. Nothing of this is financial advice or legal advice or any type of advice. It's just information for educational purposes. Hopefully we do our best. Yeah, so our first guest is Omnistrat. So we have Matt here with us, and he'll give us a better explanation of what Omnistrat is and what it helps with. But in our preliminary conversations with him and his team, we've been kind of like targeting these clusters. So these scopes are a bit where we might believe that that Omnistrat has or might have the biggest impact if this changes in the future, or we discover that, I don't know, this is super useful for another scope. We might actually modify this in the website that we're going to be storing all these conversations with the tools. But yeah, right now we believe that this might have the biggest impact in the growth scope, in the interface growth scope, and the governance security scope. So with that, Matt, thank you for being with us, and feel free to take over the presentation.
Great, thanks a lot, Juan, and I appreciate the time that MakerDAO is making for me to present Omnistrat to the group. So let me share my screen. Awesome. So Omnistrat sits in the squarely in the decentralized operations for DAO space. So this presentation will just give you a good primer, because one of the things we're doing is introducing a new approach to governance. So I'll go through the demonstration as a prep, and then we'll go into a demo, and we'll spend more time in the demo to really explain the functionality and what we're doing around governance, coordination, and execution. One of the things we're also trying to pinpoint is, what is it that we're addressing for MakerDAO, especially in context to the endgame plan. When you look at the endgame plan and the concept of the universal coordination toolkit and the governance infrastructure, those are things that are thought about, and they know they need them, but they haven't been designed or built yet. So we're introducing something that can address those challenges as it relates to managing your decentralized workforce that you currently have, and also your future MetaDAOs when the endgame plan comes more online. So going back to what Vatner had in his presentation at DevCon Bogota, where he talked about the history of MakerDAO governance, he mentioned 4 key challenges that MakerDAO is facing. The first one was around misalignment and getting those entrenched political factions around proposals, because there's a lack of consensus building tools. One of the things that we're showing is that in the current state, these are clearly problems that you've got today that they'll probably perpetuate in the new model, but they also might increase as you roll out the end game plan and the MakerDAO model. The second one is this insufficiency in transparency leading to mistrust. That's probably one of the drivers for why Walter is building out his expenses dashboard, to give that transparency so people can trust what's going on within MakerDAO. But with Omnistrat, we're definitely going to address a lot more of that transparency question. Another big challenge is probably one of the key things that Omnistrat addresses is coordination around your professional actors and eventually your MetaDAOs. And then very related to that are bringing new people into the mix, right? Onboarding talent, and then dealing with comp, which are all things that play into what Omnistrat's going to address. So let me dig a little bit deeper, more sort of generically on what the challenges around governance and coordination are right now in DAOs. And just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I've been in the Web3 space for a little over 2 years now. Almost all that time was spent specifically working in DAOs, because as a founder of a Web3 project that dealt with DAOs and coordination and governance, I wanted to be a contributor. And I did. So I've worked with a number of different projects in the space. I'm currently a consultant with Wildfire DAO, which was started by the FireEye's team. And we do a lot of meta governance work with a lot of big projects that are out there. So I have intimate knowledge of what it's like to manage DAOs from an administrative level and trying to figure things out and putting out new proposals, and also as a contributor. And what I've observed is that, governance and coordination is still a work in progress, with most DAOs still experiencing major turbulence. You think about new members lack clear direction when you're trying to onboard them, right? They're not empowered to become contributors. Also, if you think about the way proposal or DAOs are managed through the proposal process, that process scares off a lot of folks. And if you think about it, right, the authors of those proposals are really the true power brokers in a DAO. And some of these proposals are very in-depth and complex, and it's because you really need to have an intimate knowledge of that DAO to be able to write these proposals. And that can scare off a lot of folks from that process. So you're not tapping the community, the wisdom of the community that's there. So they just sort of observe and watch and wait for the power brokers to get the work done before they might be able to get involved in some of the implementation of those proposals. But also contributors are struggling with clarity and alignment. That even was in Walter's challenges around, having those visions and the mission and the objectives visible and transparent. So today that's absolutely a core problem. And then most DAOs really don't have any acceptable accountability and feedback loops to demonstrate to folks how things are going. And then another element that most people, have thinking about it sort of pie in the sky, but it's this fact that there's a lot of solutions happening, right? There are emergent solutions usually through trial and error of how to do things in a DAO, but that knowledge is not being shared at scale because there's no easy way to do it. It's because of a lack of consistent structure and tooling. So let's dig in a little bit more into the proposals themselves. They're actually an awkward fit for DAO operations, because if you think about it, a proposal is sort of the standalone, discrete decision that needs to be made, usually a yes/no when it comes to the vote. So it doesn't give contributors or members of a DAO that big picture. So what's going on here, right? And if you think about the proposal, as I said before, right, the authors of a proposals are the power brokers. But it's also going to think about it. That's from a single perspective. So the author is really someone that has that bias in diagnosing what the problem is and then what the solution or remedy should be. It also doesn't provide often with options. So here's the problem, but what are the options for solving it? We're getting there. Sometimes proposals do have some options there, but that is sort of the rarity in the scenario. And then again, this outcome disconnect, right? There's no follow through. And now we've passed this proposal and it's 6 months later and that should have been implemented. What were the results? It's usually very difficult to find that information. if you think about the tool sets that people have to currently use, it's very fragmented, and that from a user experience can be very challenging, right? There still lacks a central place where everyone can see the big picture of what's going on, what's the work in progress, and what are the results. So as I mentioned before, Omnistrat's design is based on what science says are best practices, or what empirical evidence show as effective ways to approach this. And really what it is that the ideal solution is a continually socialized, adaptive plan that is open, community derived, and transparent to all. And so the benefits, I've got a list here of 7 things, but actually I'm not going to go through these right now. What I'm going to do is save that. So when we go through the demonstration, I'll show you what Omnistrat's doing. I'll point out the benefits, how it differs from the current model. And then I want to come back during the Q&A session to this, and we can go through these line items then. And now you'll be armed with what you saw in the demonstration. And so when I start to make these claims, you guys can assess that and say, is this BS or is this true? And if it is true, to what degree is he nailing it? You know, is this an A+ and he nails it, or if it's getting there? And that's going to be more effective for you folks as you sort of do this evaluation for what tools are on the marketplace. Likewise, this was some of the standardized organizational structure that MakerDAO wanted projects like myself to adhere to comment on how well we affect these things. So again, we can come back to these things and go down these line items to say, you know, how much do we impact the decision making or collaboration and governance in general. So I'll do that after the demo. So a little bit more information on a couple of the key concepts in Omnistrat, so you understand what our key differentiators are and what we're really bringing to the marketplace. What we're doing is we're introducing coordination primitives and plan-based governance, different than proposal-based governance. So what we're doing is we're taking proposals and we're deconstructing them into these coordination primitives. We're breaking out and saying, let's start to look at the world of DAOs. Is, you know, what are the objectives we're trying to achieve? And then let's then look at what are the initiatives we could implement to achieve those objectives. And then lastly, breaking out an initiative, which is no more different than a project plan, is what are the action items that need to be implemented to implement that initiative. And with these primitives, you're creating modularity, composability, and accountability, which are all things that are critically missing in DAO operations. This is a preview of the building blocks that we have in Omnistrat. They're tied to states. So you can see how these planned building blocks, and one of the key things, right, there's only 5. And you can construct very complex plans, multi-party, multi-stakeholder plans with just these 5 building blocks. But they're also tied to both these, what we call these states here, right? As you're going through the voting process to approve or reject a proposed element of these building blocks. And then once you complete them, also you have the outcome. So these building blocks turn into a dashboard. They can communicate where you are in the process and how things are going. High level understanding of what are the components and what's included in Omnistrat. There's a governance layer that deals with both governance aspects that have to do with planning. And in planning, it's all about goal setting, voting on initiatives to achieve those outcomes, task and file management, because DAOs is all about managing the coordination and the conversation. So async chat is all part of that. And then once you get into the implementation, very similar things, executing on that initiatives, and a lot of the same things, plus the feedback loop on the results. What's interesting though is that because we have these planned building blocks and we standardize things, that opens up the opportunity for DAO-to-DAO collaboration and knowledge sharing at scale through a marketplace where you can actually turn your plans or your initiatives into playbooks of best practices that then can be shot for by other DAOs. So these are some of the killer things that are going on with this new plan-based model. I will point out one other thing. This live DAO-to-DAO collaboration, which is enabled because we now have standardized building blocks, is a game changer. Because what we've identified is we've got this technology, what we call mesh collaboration, where you can have multiple DAOs, each with their own distinct plan, but in some cases, some of those initiatives are shared with another DAO, very much like your MakerDAO model that you're going to have in the endgame plan. you now can have shared initiatives without having to sort of hop from one server like you would in Discord, into another server to get that other work done. You can actually stay in your own account, your own plan, doing that work, and where it needs to be shared with another DAO, it is shared. This just sort of shows you the evolution of strategy management methods, one being top down, which is what's going on in traditional companies. Now we're going into more of an agile where it's dynamic. Then it's open where you're including a lot more people in the process of developing that strategy or that plan, which is all inherent in Omnistrat. And then lastly, getting into this mesh collaboration technology. And this just shows you a little bit of that visual concept of what we have, right? You've got MakerDAOs, you've got Maker Core, you might have another third-party DAO or outside consulting firm, whatever it might be. They're all operating off their own distinct plan, but yet where it needs to be shared, and when you've got cross-functional planning, you're doing that. And again, pointing out what Walter brought up in the DevCon presentation about these integrated solutions, right? One of the challenges with coordinating core units was that that was a real struggle. And what they needed to get to was this integrated solutions where everyone's working together on a common cause. And that actually, interestingly enough, if you think about when you move to a MakerDAO model, that might get even worse, right? With mesh collaboration technology, you can actually do that better than what you're doing now with core units, but doing it with MakerDAOs. So it's collaboration capability that's not even imagined yet. So now we can do our demo, which I'm sure is what you're really looking forward to. So let's go back to that. Excuse me while I get back to where I need to be. And one other thing, given that we've got a bit of an audience here, but we'll probably have a lot more people watching this online, and I'm gonna get rid of this chat as much as I would like to keep it up. I don't think we're gonna be able to see it.
It's a question.
Think about the kind of questions that people might have to ask. So even if you don't have that question yourself, it'd be great to get them asked during this live presentation as recorded, so that when people watch it after the fact, they'll still get those questions answered because you guys were thinking about it. Awesome. So we're now in the interface of Omnistrat. This is the 5 building blocks.
Matt, before we move on, I think Tim had a question that might be good to start with. I think that it's I don't know, Tim, if you want to jump on the mic or you have no access to one.
Yeah, so quick comment. Please throw questions at me during the demo. I can stop and answer them. Unfortunately, the comment, the chat box, I have to put away, so I'm not going to see that while I'm doing the demo. So yeah, please break in and just interrupt me.
I'll show the questions.
Not sure if you can hear me.
Yep.
But yeah, I was just kind of curious how Omnistrat, you were talking about onboarding and bringing people into DAOs, et cetera, socializing that knowledge. I'm curious how you frame contributors, like individual contributors versus like, say, their actual work, their contributions. So maybe that's where we're going to go in this demo. So that's what that question was.
Yeah. Hopefully that will get answered. But quickly, it's like the reality is with DAOs, you're going to have a whole mix of people, right? Lurkers that are just showing up trying to figure out what's going on here. Is this my tribe? And you want to be able to entice them to come in. You want them to figure out what's going on. The whole key is self-service, right? As we know with the MakerDAO Academy, right? That ended up being canceled because it was too much work. And mentoring and onboarding new talent is a big task. So the whole goal is that when you've got a publicly published master plan that shows goals and the initiatives and where things are at, people can come in and see that and say, oh, okay, I get what's going on. I see what they're trying to do. Hey, I've got some experience with that. Who do I need to talk to? And they can self-serve and come on board. Right up to, hey, we got a core, we got core operators or contributors. So you've got a whole mix, right? When I look through the tribunals, the decentralized voting committees, right? You got a lot of people in the mix, budget allocators, those are things that we want to manage. So as I go through this demo, hopefully it'll be clear, but certainly if it's not, hit me with a direct question like, this is how we operate. How would you support this exact scenario in the app? Any other questions or want to get back to the demo? Cool. So again, these are the 5 building blocks. They're very simple. The whole goal is that everything you see in this app is not like a new interface that you have to learn. What I'm hoping is that everything you see in this app is like dead simple. This is exactly how I do it in all these other apps. It's really the fact that we've brought these all together in an elegant, integrated solution that makes for the user experience that we're delivering. So again, you've got this first thing, this S, right? Stands for the seasonal plan. This is the container for your DAO. It's got 2 key things that it happens in this. It's where you capture the narrative for the plan that you have so that everyone can understand the visions, values, why we have the plan we have. It's basically exactly what it says, the narrative. It also defines the time frame that we're dealing with. Are we doing seasons management? And this is going to be for the next 3 months. Is it going to be an annual plan? Whatever you define, you can just define those timeframes. Then these yellow blocks are really the plan itself, right? You've got the objectives, what you're trying to accomplish. Then you have the initiatives. And as I go through this, you'll understand how the power of this when you deconstruct proposals and it makes decision making easier, because now we can spend your time deciding what are the goals that we want to do. Then as a next step, start to say, all right, everyone, who's got great ideas for how do we achieve those outcomes with the initiatives? And then again, action items are more like project management, assigning tasks and things that need to get done. And then we also have a grouping object that makes it easier to construct and organize your plan. So the best way to show you how Omnistrat works is to show you the life of a plan as it goes through the process. So I'm going to jump over to that part of the demo and start to show you how that works. So what we have here is that we are seeing the beginnings of the plan being developed. You'll also see over here that we've got these three tabs or destinations: lead, plan, and act. We've got a very simple, generic planning and then implementation process. The first is lead, right? And in the lead process, it's basically comes down to, this is when you establish the goals for the next plan that's going to go out the next season that you're going to have. Once you refine and it's really, even though you can do more than that, right? It's not like you're locked to just do objectives, but it's getting you to focus on what are the goals. Do that first. You'll see here that this is where we create a new plan. So when you go to create a new plan, if I click this, you see that this is where we're creating our strategic plan. Here's the time frame. This is where the narrative goes. So if I did that, I would be creating this first object here. And then from there, I can start to build off it, where you can either click this and add an objective, edit this one here, or if we can go to a quick entry, which is basically going in here, and it's almost like just clicking a tab button will just add it. So you can construct plans just like you're typing a Word document. So getting back to the plan itself, what are we supporting for a process, right? So again, this strategic plan is in the lead stage. So we're getting folks to focus on objectives. You've got 3 tiers. So you can, in the way that the Omnistrat's set up, you've got the top tiers, which might be governance council type people, the equivalent of what would be leaders in a traditional company. But if you've got 3 different layers or levels in the organization, so you've got folks that only have access to lead, plan, and act. Some folks that only have access to plan and act, and then some people that only have access to act, which can certainly be triggered, gated, token gated, or whatever milestone that you need to facilitate who has access to what. But in this process, right, it's everything around planning and then implementation is, especially in a networked environment, of loosely connected participants. It's all about managing the conversation. And if you go back to that slide where it's multiple applications jumping in and out, it might start in Discord and then might go over to Discourse, then might even go over to Snapshot. You're breaking up the conversation. What we're trying to do is keep it all in one place. So in this case, if you click on these, and by the way, these red dots that you're seeing.
Before we go forward, Kianga has a question. I don't know, Kianga, if you want to jump on the mic.
Sure. Hi, Matt. Thank you. I just wanted to ask if you could kind of explain who the user is right now as you're like I'm a little bit lost. Like I understand at a high level what we're trying to achieve and that there's an app, but now I'm not sure that I'm following like who's creating this, who's versus who's seeing it. And so maybe if you could just give a little more context around that, that would help me get located in the presentation.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, that's one of the things that's interesting through a demo. So it's almost like I should have one of those baseball caps with different names on it, so you know what my persona is as I'm doing this part of the demo. Right now, assume that I've mentioned that there's these three levels. Assume that I'm one of these top levels. I'm like a governance council member. So I've got full access. So I'm the one that can actually, I've got the rights to create a new plan, which would also enable me to close out an older plan. But that enables me. So I'm sort of one of those folks that has full access. I can log in as someone else. If I logged into someone that only had plan and act access, when I logged in, I'll literally only see these two tabs. I won't have access to the lead tab. And what we're trying to do is manage this through a very simple 3-step process, and that's it. And so again, it's like, who are you going to invite into this high level planning when you're basically saying, all right, you know, what's the narrative? What are the objectives? And again, you might be a DAO that's completely transparent, so everyone has access to these three tiers. And really, then you use the lead plan act as a way to say, all right, everyone, we're focused on objective setting, not the, you know, we can come up with initiatives, fine, but we need to focus on this first. So yeah, so that standpoint, I am that person. I'm that person, the sort of the highest level access that is kicking off the planning process. So hopefully that helps.
So this is like a whiteboard, sort of. It's like a dashboard. Everybody who's going to be involved in planning logs in, and then this is our workspace. And depending on who you are in the organization, depends on your access and maybe like what content you contribute versus what you consume.
Yeah, and when I click the next button, it'll be fully realized that you'll understand. Yes, it is a group workspace. This is where everyone comes together to collaborate collectively. Because if you think about it, plans now in a plan-based governance model, you're not dealing with these, you know, momentous proposals, you know, yes, no. Plans now become emergent. The community creates the plan together. And how do they do that? So if you see these red dots, that shows you that there's new conversations that are happening that I need to be aware of, or I haven't read since I last logged in. So when I click on this, what I'm bringing up is what we call our social strat panel. You'll notice here that it also says that it's locked for this particular social. While I'm in the lead stage, it's only accessible for folks that have lead access here. And this is where people can have your debate and conversation. And you'll clearly see that with that red dot, it means that this was the new conversation that was happening here. So I can see quickly where I left off from the last part. One thing, as I mentioned before, right, everything that you're seeing here, right, these things you're starting to get a sense, oh yeah, I get it. It's like an outline format, exactly what we're trying to do. This is like any asynchronous chat app, Discord, Slack. And what I knew is that because we're now incorporating these functionality into Omnistrat, that the table stakes that I have to do it as well as they do it. But in fact, I said we need to push ourselves to come up with even better functionality for asynchronous chat than people are experiencing in Discord or other apps. So in this case, you'll see how we can now have a conversation about these things. And you picked up on a great point. It's like a whiteboard. Well, in actual fact, if I go up down here to the color legend, you'll see that when you first throw something in here, when you first create an object, its default is that it's proposed. So it's just like a yellow Post-it note on a whiteboard. It's proposed. Now you've got to have that debate, the conversation. Well, is it growing protocol revenue? Should we define what that is? Have that debate, the conversation. Eventually, when we get later into the planning process, you'll see when we get to the approve and reject stage for this, and I'll show that in the very next thing. But one key to think about when this is that not only are we capturing conversation, we have threaded conversation. So you'll see right here, it says one reply. So if I go over here, you'll see that I can have threaded conversations around a document that was just uploaded. I also am embedding task management in here. So you'll see down at the bottom, I need to move my little Zoom functionality. Come on. All right, this is going to be a bit of a problem. Sorry. All right, there we go. So down here, you can see how we can make a request, because what we observed is that through conversation and debate is usually when things need to get done. Like if you're having a debate about what it should be, A or B, a lot of cases, well, we don't know because we need to get some more information. So someone then needs to go off and get some more information. Or at the end, the conclusion of a conversation, hey, great. So the next steps are, Jill, you need to do this. So what we basically said is embed task management right in the conversation. So as soon as someone needs to go do something, you can capture that and not lose it. So again, you can clearly see how I can quickly grab a name, give it a title, give it a date, and then assign that, and you're issuing a request. So why do we call our task request? It's because in a loosely connected network of participants in a DAO, you have to respect their availability and their interest in wanting to do this. So what you're doing is you're issuing a request that they may or may not accept. And I'll show you the back end on how we manage that simple workflow in here as well. So now let's go and show you the next stage in this plan's life cycle. And you also notice that red dot went away because now that I've looked at it, I'm all set. So now let's say, okay, great. We've got the objectives set. Now the life of this plan is moving forward to the plan stage. And let me just bring up the correct plan to show you the demo. And so now you're going to see that, okay, great. Now I can see that we've got some objectives. Now we've got some initiatives underneath here. Now the colors. So let's go back to this color legend to explain, right? Now you can very easily see, again, that whole self-service. Anyone showing up, if they've never been here before, well, looking at this, I get it. I can see an outline. I see O's and I's. Even if I don't even understand what O's and I's are, if I look at this, you could probably figure it out. It doesn't take a genius. And you can start, and obviously if you can see this view, you can say, all right, great. These things have been approved. So that debate's over. This is still being debated. It's still proposed. This has been rejected. Again, I can still see where there's new conversations since the last time I logged in, and I can come here. Now in this demonstration, just so you know what hat I'm wearing, I'm actually going to be Matt administrator, or governance council throughout the demo. So I'll allude to what the dynamic is for other people, but really all that's showing you is what access or powers do they have in the app. But everyone collectively doing the plan development is pretty similar. But now, again, you can start to see, okay, great, I can get a sense of this plan coming together. The way I look at it is, think about it. Once you've settled on what the objectives are for the season coming up, and everyone's in agreement on that, then at this point you say, this is where you get the community. So when you get to the plan stage, for that broader community that has plan and act rights, you've now expanded. So obviously the folks that have the lead access is a smaller group. You're now expanding it. So when you're at the plan stage and the plan, and just to walk through this process, when the plan is in the lead stage, it's only visible in this tab. Until you shift it to where it says plan now, then that basically exposes it in this plan tab. And therefore, now people that have been waiting for the plan to get to the stage can see it because they don't have access to the lead stage. If they see it in plan stage, now they can contribute. And again, what we're trying to do is manage the process so that you settle on the objectives. Then when you're ready to receive initiatives, you open it up to a broader community who have those access rights. And now you're getting a lot more folks contributing to, oh, I've got a great idea for an initiative to achieve that outcome. And this is where I'm going to start to go into details. So one of the things that will be helpful for those folks is that when you expand on these things, you now can see where we have the narrative. You can see the start and the end date here. So you can see the time frame we're dealing with, the narrative, why we have the plan or the objectives we have here. So you can communicate to a broader audience the parameters, right? The vision, the values, and what we're trying to achieve. And now people can start to think about what are the initiatives that they want to put in here. And again,
Matt, you mentioned Omnistrat as a consensus seeking tool. So I was wondering, let's say that different people have different plans. For example, Kianga could propose, hey, let's do more of this. And then Tim, on the other hand, could say, no, actually, I think that that's not a good idea. we should do more of that. Is that something Omnistrat could do, or that's something that we should do in some other tool and then come with the once
No,
the plan is-
absolutely, that happens here. That conversation, that critical discourse, right? The debate, that's what you're capturing here. So if I go in here, and again, you're having that debate here, you're saying, well, you know, should we be reducing our cost? And if we are, how much? And if you think about it, right, it all came from here, like treasury risk management. That was the objective. So now people are starting to throw out ideas for initiatives. But now people can see a set of initiatives that all could potentially achieve the outcome of treasury risk management. And now it's up to the community that has you can look at this and say, wow, now that I can see a set of initiatives, I can do comparative analysis and pick the best ones. Now, one of the things I should let you know that we are a project in development. We've built a heck of a lot of functionality. There's still plenty of functionality to go. So there is still functionality that we don't have yet, but the application is absolutely pilotable for groups that want to test it out to see if they like this plan-based model. And then as a good lean startup methodology is that we'll start to work on other extensions and functionality extensions once we know the core functionality has got its preliminary product market fit. And the reason I say that is because one of the things that we plan to do is turn this request, instead of just making it sort of a task management feature, that we'll actually have add to this functionality where you'll be able to select a voting method at this point. It could be a temperature check, it could be the official vote. But what you're doing is just saying, okay, we've had the debate around treasury management, there's 5 initiatives, and we want to get a temperature check on what people are thinking are the best initiatives. People can still go back in and update them, change them around. And again, until you get to that point where you're ready to do the final vote and move forward. But we also show that you really want to have an adaptive plan. So if you're going down that plan and things aren't working out, you should have the ability to say, all right, let's cancel this and switch gears. And that's where you get into this concept over here, this abandoned. So when you get into upon completion, right, was the expectation met, not met, or abandoned? Things that are just critical for when you're managing operations, but again, become awkward fits for proposals when in a lot of cases, like it's been voted, it's approved, it must be implemented, you know, all budgets must be spent. And it's almost like it's written in stone. We're trying to get away from that model, especially when it comes to DAO operations, right? So hopefully that's helping around understanding the consensus mechanisms. In this case, is that now people, you know, it's breaking it apart to say, focus on the objectives first, let's settle on those, then and so it's breaking out the decision-making process. So you're not dealing with this proposal that might be very complex with a lot of moving parts. Now you're just saying, well, just tell me what the goals are. Now we've settled on the goals, show me all the different initiatives. And now you're crowdsourcing and hopefully expanding what are all the different ways you can solve that. The original author of that objective might have a clear vision and they can put in their initiatives, but someone else might have a better one, or the community might, and this is where this emergent comes in from. People in the community might have great expertise that you weren't tapping before. Now they come in and see that initiative. It's like, that's really good, but I think you should add one angle here. Add this one, you know, element to it, and it's going to be even more powerful. And then the author says, wow, that's genius. I love it. Let's include it. And then the community rallies around that. That's where you get buy-in around and consensus building. I'll also explain this. Again, going back to empirical evidence and what science says are best practices and leads to greater success. When the community is part of the process of developing the plan, you get higher buy-in. And this holds true even when the ideas of particular members of the communities, some of their ideas were not approved. When they see the transparency in the process, they are still more bought into the plan because they're a part of the process, even if their initiatives didn't get approved. And that's where this is all science-based. It's not just say, oh, I think this is a cool project management tool that DAOs will love. It's all based on science. So that's how you start to really get into the under the covers when it comes into where do we make the claim that we've got consensus building tools inherent in our application.
Yeah,
Hope.
we agree with that. Something I wanted to comment on, Matt, is that yeah, we've seen that, right? That if you make it everything more transparent and you involve the whole community, you do end up with higher engagement and people feel more involved. Something we've seen in Maker, it's a bit of the opposite, where you have a lot of proposals, a lot of different ideas, and it's hard to visualize the bigger picture. But these ideas. So Kianga might say, "Hey, we need to save trees in, I don't know, this forest," and Tim might say, "We need to go plant some, I don't know, microloans in India or something." I'm making this up, by the way. So but basically we lack of like a general vision that unifies the whole thing. And my question was more, is there anything, and I don't think that there is in the whole market, and basically this is people, if anyone's building any like specific consensus tool, please talk to us. But basically, is there something that would say, okay, this part of Kianga's plan makes sense, and this part of Tim's makes sense because of this or this, or you can kind of like vote in a way that it's like, okay, 40% of people wanted this, 30% wanted that, 20% wanted this. So based on that, we can kind of find the middle ground in something. Is there anything like that, or am I shooting too high?
Yeah, I would say that's those kinds of things are experiments that we want to start. Like once we get into production and we're rolling this out and we start to get into the granular roadmap areas, those are actually things that have been discussed, and there's ideas and thoughts and even methods to deal with that. They're not built in here, but I can tell you that in my research, I've uncovered things that I would love to add in. So there's definitely things that we can do. Like part of it is, getting back to the basic of your question, right? There's too many ideas. There's too many initiatives. Everyone's come up with, and let's say if you got 30 different initiatives for that one objective, it gets unreasonable, right? And so there might be a filtering system. But one thing we can say that's happening out of the box today is if you read the narrative here, right, you can say this is exactly what we're trying to accomplish. It gives you sort of some guardrails on what we're doing here, what we're open to looking at. And then lastly, right, when you don't have any guardrails, when your objective is embedded in your proposal, then every proposal can be going in any direction. At least this way, you've got an objective those guardrails can be there. Like we're interested in, excuse me, we're interested in these kinds of ideas, or we're not looking for things outside of this, right? Or if it's international expansion, that goes in a different objective. But it gives you at least people now, when they stick an initiative there, the first test is, well, does it meet the criteria of the success that we're looking for in this objective? And if it doesn't, then it should not get voted up. If it's a great idea, maybe it belongs, rolled up to a different objective. So I'll leave it on that. I know we're coming up on an hour, and I do like my product, so I talk a lot about it, but I do want to capture some other stuff that I want to show you. The questions are great, keep them coming, but I'm going to sort of fast track the rest of this so you get a quick sense of how we wrap this up. One thing I will show you is that here, at least you can see the grouping. So if you're doing a cost reduction program by core unit or MakerDAO, you can actually, say, hey, these are all the different groups. I want them organized this way. So you can at least see how this grouping function, you can use the grouping function at any level. You can group objectives, you can group initiatives, you can even group action items like they are here. So that grouping function happens there. Lastly, I'm going to go to ACT. So once you click on ACT, this is actually the plan that's being implemented right now. So you can actually have a seasonal plan that's being acted on while you're in the planning process for next season. And that's why the navigation structure was built the way it was. Also, once you get into the ACT stage, you can clearly see this plan's in the ACT stage. It's only one plan can be in the ACT stage. So when you have everyone here, like there's only one plan, that's it, right? It forces whatever you're doing to be in one place, one centralized place. But it enables you to get through. Now you can start to see the outcomes and that we've achieved these objectives and what's happening here. One thing I'll try to explain, I'll do it in this next part. I'm going to make another comment, right? If you think about it, most apps right now, given the fragmented nature of all the tooling, the planning process and the implementation process is spread out amongst many different tools. What that also means is that project artifacts, the votes, the deliberations in Discord that then ended up in discourse, project artifacts when you're implementing it are all over the place. They'll never ever come back together. Once they're in different apps, they stay that way and it's lost to history. In our app, we've got the ability to archive plans. So if you think about it, we're capturing the planning and implementation process and the governance umbrella around that. All the debates and the discussions are captured, who was involved in those discussions, all the supplemental and supporting documentation is there, and the final outcomes. All that is captured for historical preservation, so people can go back and see that. So if you want to onboard new people, they also now have a new tool where they can go into the archive and look at your most recent past plans and see everything that was accomplished and wasn't. We're also capturing, and by the way, you should notice that things that were still in planning mode or things that were rejected that were gray aren't here because we're keeping that draft kind of information in the planning steps. So lead and plan or planning steps act as the implementation. So again, it cleans things up, and so you can keep the draft stuff where it needs to be. But again, if you think about the power of being able to go back and seeing everything in one place, all the supplemental docs, it's really incredible what the power of this. So a couple more touching base just on some of the aspects of the app. This is the My Desk. This is actually the landing page when you first come into the app. So if you think about a very sprawling plan with conversations everywhere and tasks being thrown out in the form of requests or action items needing to be completed, there's a lot going on. It would be very messy to try to manage your day by poking around a plan. All you need to do is come into My Desk and see everything in one place. Needs your attention, right? These are things like the triage center. These are things that you need to deal with today that people are waiting on. It's not things that you've accepted, right? Things that are assigned to you is the next tab down. So I can see like this is due today or this is overdue. Up here, these are, if you look at it, here's a request, it's R, you can see the A, which are the action items. So need detailed cost reduction plan. I can see what it's related to, who issued this request, when it was issued, and when it's due. So I can literally go in here and I could go back to go to the plan to see it in context, or I can deal with it right here. So if I go right in here, I can see the conversation where that emanated from. And this is that workflow management that I said I was going to show you. All I need to do is either I get accepted or rejected. Now, right now, again, conversation, I can say, wait, I don't understand. Why do you want me to do this? And send it back. So as you're debating whether you should accept it or not, that person can have a conversation with you, right? It's not jumping in and out of different apps. Let's assume that I'm going to accept it, right? That turns it blue. And then immediately it says, okay, great. You've accepted it. Now the next step is either you complete it or you abandon it. And again, I can continue the conversation here because it's now a threaded conversation. So I can still have a conversation before I accept it, while I'm completing it, or after it's completed. All that happens in here. So if I close out of this, just to show you what it now looks like, it went off this and it actually showed up here, down here, right? And if I now address it and say I've completed it, and here you go, complete it. I can even attach the file as you saw on that. Now I can close, and now it's actually latest completed by you. Now it's down here as a completed green request. And so if you think about it, waiting on others, waiting on them to accept things or waiting on them to complete. Now, Susie, who was waiting on me to do this, when she goes into her My Desk, she'll see that she was waiting for me to accept it. It's now off that list and it's now down here completed. So she can go in here and say, well, what if people completed that I was waiting on personally? And I can quickly go to it and view it and get the answer. If I was waiting on a report, I could click in there and get the report because it's attached to the request. So you can see how we're managing all this in here. And I can literally just come one place and start to look at all the things that I got to do today and deal with them right here. And then, so last tab, and this will complete the demo. I'm looking at the time, so obviously we don't have a ton of time for conversation. But again, conversations all over the map. Clicking, following the red dots can be tedious. If you come to your social feed, this shows you everything reverse chronological order, and all the conversations are here. One thing to note, you'll see lead, plan, and act. So this task, treasury risk management, there's 3 tabs. because we have this concept of multidimensional conversations. So that given that you've got 3 different types of people with access rights, that same primitive, if I was a leader and I can have 3 different levels, I can have a conversation where it's only privy to the leadership or the leader class of folks, plan or based on the managers that own that, and then act as sort of everyone. So you're managing, you can have 3 different types of conversation depending on who's invited for that same object. Different than, setting up a channel in Discord where you just got to come up with a new channel, and that's why you get that channel proliferation. All right, so hopefully you guys get a sense of this. One of the things I didn't talk about is that whole composability in the playbooks. Just so you get a sense for that. If I just quickly run back to ACT, I'll just quickly show you where you can see that. If I open this up, you'll see here, create a playbook. So I can take an initiative or a set of action items or even an objective, any level, and create a playbook. That immediately, if I save it, can turn into something that can be in the strat source. So now best practices and learnings can be saved and shared both across your DAO for your personal use later, or shared with any DAO that can benefit from the learning and the best practices that you guys have worked through and developed. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now. We can go back to the presentation and re-hit those bullet points if you think that would be helpful. If people have general questions, I can answer those. You can let me know what would be most helpful.
Before that, I think Kianga had a couple of really good questions. Kianga, I don't know if you want to jump on the mic.
Sure. Yeah. One question is, there a read-only view that can be made public to the internet, so someone who doesn't have an account can see. We could decide what maybe aspects are viewable, and then I also wondered if we could edit documents in the app. So one thing right now, we have all the text that Rune has posted on the forum, but it's quite cumbersome to really have people give comments in that form naturally. So I was wondering if there's like a in-app, like Google Apps, Google Docs kind of thing.
We don't have that yet. And quite frankly, given when there is like a doc management like Google Docs, right? We wouldn't try to recreate that functionality. We'd probably just try to do some kind of integration that makes it a little bit more embedded. Again, that's probably more roadmap stuff. Getting back to managing permissioning, I didn't get into the permissioning, but every primitive or building block in the planning process has very granular details where you can see here how you've got permanent teams, like these could be the core units or meta DAOs. You can decide what kind of access right. Is it read only? Is it full access? No SSPs, a social strat panel. So they can see that it's happening. They can see things getting completed, but they can't see the conversation that's happening. Or in some cases, it might be something that needs to be hidden because it's legally sensitive or something like that. But yeah, we've got very robust object access listing kind of functionality here as well.
And is that something someone can casually view? I'm just thinking of people who are on our forum, that'd be potentially really powerful to show this work that's going on, even if they can't comment or they're not at the level of being active in the DAO, but we really make it very transparent how we're designing the scopes real time. So just wondering if that view is available to the general public.
It's possible, and I'm only being cautious because I'm not sure if it's as fully functioned as you're envisioning. So we don't have an easy guest pass so people can come in. You can bring people in, and they can be put into sort of this unassigned group that only has read-only access to everything in the plan, and so they can see what's going on. Maybe you want them to comment. So there is a way to do it, but I would say that what we haven't built out yet is that guest functionality so that it's publicly. So right now, this is kind of built where you have to be a member of this account and come into this organization in this environment. But we want to make it where this plan is a public facing plan and anyone can come see it. And maybe you have the capability for random people coming in from the outside to ask questions, much like they would do in Discord. So yeah, I would say is that we've got the ability to support that in limited ways now, but probably not to the robustness that you're envisioning yet.
Matt, I don't know if you have a hard stop by the top of the hour. I know that some people do have other meetings, but I have a couple of questions that I would like to get into the recording.
Yeah, I'm open, so I can stick around and answer any questions. I know I haven't gone back to the PowerPoint, so I'll leave this for you, right? Because we don't have that time to go back. But the PowerPoint should be, my presentation should be part of the assets that you'll see with the video. Go back to that presentation, and when you look at the solution part and whether Omnistrat is answering those things, go down that list and say, all right, I saw the demo. Is this proven? So it's not just marketing speak.
And if not, you get your money back.
You can get your money back, and I'm more than happy to go back in. But yeah, so any questions, throw them at me. If you do want me to go back to that slide, I'm more than happy.
No, that's good. Tim had actually a good question about integrations. I don't know, Tim, if you had something like in particular, or if you were thinking something specific.
There's so many different ways to take that question. So I'm curious what your guys' general integration strategy is, especially considering this is like a solution to, for example, discourses, forums. Does this integrate with that? And then general task management. Those are the two ones that came to mind. Yeah.
The vision I've got is that we build an open API so people can build whatever extensible functionality they want. Maybe even have an SDK so that they can build, so they can integrate functionality into our interface. So we definitely want to be able to integrate with all the typical things like Safe and Snapshot and things like that. You know, if someone's got a preferred task manager that they use, ClickUp or whatever, there's no reason why all these action items and these requests don't get fed into those systems. We do not have that functionality today. I would say that, you know, we're a pre-seed stage project. There's a lot more, there's a ton of stuff on the roadmap that we need to get built, including some table stakes functionality like our Kanban board and things like that. So I would say that we've got a lot of robust functionality, so you can pilot it and really get into it and use its core functions. But you're going to quickly say, where's the Kanban board? Where's this integration? You know, and we know about them. We need to build them. There's a lot more to go. But we wanted to, so I will say one of the reasons we're not doing it, one is we sort of went into mothball for the end of the crypto winter last year, just because raising funding was challenging. But also more importantly, we wanted to partner with a DAO so that everything we're building, not only we know what our roadmap is and we can share a lot of that with folks, but we want them to prioritize what gets built. So really, you know, if things work out with MakerDAO, there's some groups that want to pilot this and work with us. That's when we can start to say, here, this is on our roadmap. This is what we're thinking. If you guys have new ideas, we're open. And then let's start to prioritize what gets built next.
Nice. Yeah, I had a similar or an extension of the question of what Kianga was saying, but I think it would be great to have like the internal view kind of thing, and then see how the actual report for the community looks like. I think that could be quite powerful to have like this way of showing progress or showing milestones or showing what the plan is. So yeah, I would be interested.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You know, you've got Wouter grading that great expenses dashboard. Imagine tying in a public facing plan so that everyone could, you know, and it's tied, so you can click on that expenses for a particular thing. We also would like to embed where you can actually put a budget for an objective, and then you can allocate it to the different initiatives that you approved, and then bounties tied to the action item, so that when people complete an action item, it goes to Safe and does a payment. So embedding the budgeting and payout or comp components is also things that we want to add.
Nice. I don't know if there's any other questions from, I don't know, Kiang and Tim have been the more active ones, Frank as well.
Yeah, I'll throw one in quickly. So the archive, would imagine there's the possibility to have a rule there that you can keep the any conversation or any integration or anything, any kind of strategic vision that was delivered or not delivered or it failed. You can keep it there, archive forever, or you can limit that to 3 years, 7 years, what have you. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, can you kind of walk us through a little bit real quickly? I know, because I know we're way over time, over the admin rights and rules. How diverse are they? Can you add to the rules and rights?
Yeah, so there's actually a ton of functionality and rules on who can do what and when, depending on what their role is and what the stage of the plan is in. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that is already embedded in there. Specifically to your point on the archiving, right? There's some embedded rules now, right? So if you come in as just a contributor, right? Only access only. If you go to the archive, it's not like you're going to all of a sudden have access to the conversation that happened in the lead stage, or steward council kind of member people. So you would still, like, whatever your rights are currently when you go to the archives and things, you're still limited to those rights. But my guess is there's still so much more we're going to need to do on the access list control side of things. But I can tell you that there's a lot of robust functionality. Like, there's all these rules for what you can do with an object, when it's in the plan stage versus the act stage, who the owner of that is. So yeah, I won't get into the details yet, but it's like I said, there's a lot of robust logic that's already embedded in what we've built so far.
One of my last questions, I think, Matt, it's regarding implementation. So if any team watching this is interested in trying this out, like, what are the conditions? What should they do? Should they contact you? Should they contact your team? What's the mechanism there?
Yeah, reach out to me. We've got a Discord. Certainly any of you folks, can get through to me, but yeah, we've got a website. So yeah, there's ways to reach out. Probably end up at the Discord, ask me, and we can get connected, and then onboard you. So we don't have a public facing beta program yet. It's a closed alpha, if you will. But we can set that up, and like I said, we're looking for partners who really want to use a tool and give us lots of feedback so we know what to build and what the right prioritization for what we're going to build next is.
Perfect. So yeah, if there are no more questions, I think this has been great.
I'm going to drop
thank you very much.
my email.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if you have a slide with it so that it's
that's right. My presentation's got my name and my email address on the bottom of every slide, and then there's a thank you slide that's got all the contact information.
Perfect. Then yeah, thanks everyone for coming. Thank you, Matt, for joining us and being our first guest in this series, and see you soon.
Great. I appreciate everyone.
Have a nice one.